Cars are cool. They can go fast, require little physical strength to operate, and have big-ass speakers. Having lived through a car-dependent childhood, I used to believe that everyone should be able to drive one. But as I grew up, I started to realize that there's a problem with that. Even though cars can be useful, they are the most space-inefficient mode of travel, even at speed. Allowing cars to dominate living environments causes noise pollution, air pollution, and weakens social interactions. Streets, which were once 5 km/h places where people could socialize, hang out, and let kids play, are now either parking spaces or 50 km/h thoroughfares. But before we get to Car Lite, here's a brief history about car management in Singapore. Singapore faced congestion issues in the 60s, and to stop that from happening, in 1975 it introduced financial barriers to manage the car population. The bargain was that people who are still willing to purchase a car are able to cruise down roads with lesser congestion, and people who cannot afford it have to take the bus. Except that it was the year 1975, just 2 years after the formation of SBS. And at that point of time, the fleet was so bad that at one point of time, more than half of it broke down. As for purchasing a car, there are some new things to pay for. There's a registration fee, an additional registration fee, excise duty, GST, VES, an expensive piece of paper which allows you to own a car, ultimately making a $20,000 Honda Civic in the US cost 6 times more in Singapore. Not forgetting additional charges depending on how much your car farts. As a result, the vast majority of the population lives car-free. And if we are to judge car friendliness by vehicle ownership per capita, Singapore ranks 94th globally, which fares better than countries known for pedestrian friendliness: Japan, the Netherlands, Denmark, and South Korea. However, the current ways of managing cars in Singapore are unsustainable. Despite having few people own cars, car usage in Singapore ranks number 1 in the world because of its car-first city design, as well as the financial cost involved in purchasing one. In the late 20th century, newer towns in Singapore were built to accommodate the car. Multi-storey car parks in every estate, 6-lane highway-style arterial with high-speed slip lanes in neighbourhoods, and multi-level junctions. Even though public transit has improved, it often takes twice as long because buses have no transit signal priority and they often get stuck in traffic. And since people take the fastest and most convenient mode of travel, it doesn't make sense for a car owner to take the bus because it's likely to be stuck in traffic anyway. Furthermore, because the outside was becoming more dangerous and uninviting to walk in, there was even greater incentive to keep on driving. Taking into account the cost needed to purchase a car in Singapore, there's the sunk cost effect, defined as the tendency to continue a behavior or endeavor as a result of previously invested resources, which in layman terms mean, since I spend so much already, I might as well drive everywhere. Ultimately, when a product becomes rare, expensive, and convenient, it becomes a status symbol, which cars have become. While much talk about Singapore's transport system focuses on how great public transit is, what many usually don't cover is inequity. After decades of putting cars on a higher pedestal than other modes of travel, there's this bizarre scenario in Singapore where the wealthier bit of society can purchase things like safe, comfortable, quick, first-class mobility, while everyone else has to take twice as long to get around and bear the consequences of car-first design, like hostile streets, unsafe school zones, circuitous walking routes, as well as polluted air and high noise levels. What we coin as pedestrian infrastructure like overhead bridges and underpasses are just car infrastructure in disguise, only built so that you as a human being will not slow down the flow of cars. At this point, you might be asking, why not just give everyone a car and allow everyone to drive? We could build more lanes, increase capacity, and solve traffic congestion, right? No. Because as soon as a new piece of car infrastructure is built, it invites more people to use it. And while it might seem to improve congestion at first, it often becomes as clogged as before a few years down the road. This phenomenon is known as induced demand, and almost every research paper about traffic engineering will tell you that building more lanes generates more traffic. Furthermore, not everyone can drive. People with certain disabilities, as well as people under the age of 18. Forcing car dependency onto people indirectly throws all youths into house arrest. Given how 12% of Singapore's land is already dedicated to transport, it is almost the same as the amount of land dedicated to housing. We can't keep expanding road infrastructure indefinitely till we don't have places to live. One car will fit in the city, 5 million will be destroyed, and that's why Singapore needs to go Car Lite. What is Car Lite, you might ask? Well, car refers to a private vehicle and light means low. Car Lite is all about encouraging people to rely less on cars to travel around, not just through financial barriers, but also through policies and design. Car Lite is a paradigm shift of the current way we look at transport. In the past, transportation in Singapore was like this. Walking and cycling were the most direct options and cars had limited access. In the 20th century, when car infrastructure massively expanded, walking, cycling and public transit took a hit, with slower travel times and disconnected roads. What Car Lite aims for is this: the return of direct routes to the city's inhabitants while discouraging driving by making it more inconvenient. Here's how it can be done. Minimum parking requirements, which are based on the outdated concept that everyone must drive, can be abolished. Space previously used to store cars in multi-story complexes can be turned into spaces for economic growth, like shops, restaurants, and businesses. Outside of car parks, streets can be taken away from cars and given back to human beings. Given how some local estates use a grid network, Superblocks, which are used in Barcelona, can be adapted. The idea is pretty simple. Take an area of 9 blocks and pedestrianize every street within them. The streets are made one way for cars so that people driving only do so because they need to, like business owners and residents, with the exception of emergency vehicles we can pass through. In an area like this, cars are guests, and creating such people-friendly environments not only discourage driving, studies have shown that they improve life expectancy by an average of 200 days per inhabitant. There's so much to what makes a great street, and I'll talk more about that in a future video. Outside of quiet streets, bike paths can be built on both sides of the road because people live on both sides, right? Building more bike infra while taking away car infrastructure will encourage more people to stop driving for short trips, because while induced demand can cause a vicious cycle of more cars and congestion, it can also be used to generate a virtuous cycle of more bike trips, and on a larger scale, a healthier population. Apart from discouraging driving in towns, long-distance travel by public transit can be encouraged through the construction of medium-speed rail lines. It is known that trains are by far the most efficient method of moving large amounts of people, and while the existing MRT network is comprehensive, what it lacks is speed. Travelling 47 km from one end of the east-west line to the other takes around 90 minutes, almost 2.5 times as long as driving. Creating parallel express routes with faster trains running at 130 km per hour or so could make travelling from Woodlands to Raffles Place possible in just 14 minutes, or Tampines to Raffles Place in just 9, substantially shorter than the current travel time of the MRT by up to 76%. Systems such as the mini Shinkansen in Japan and the KLIA Express have operational characteristics similar to that. While quick and fast long-distance travel is vital, what's more important than that is how much people can do at a human scale: accessibility. Turns out the greatest transport plan is actually a land use plan, because the lesser people need to travel long distances, the lesser strain there will be on the transportation network. If homes, workspaces, and commercial activity are strictly zoned to be separated far away from each other, then travelling via bus or train to get things done becomes a necessity. But if more of these places are accessible within walking distance in what we call mixed-use developments, then things can be done more efficiently. This isn't a new concept at all. In fact, it was the way Singapore functioned for hundreds of years, prior to the introduction of cars. Shop, house, it's right there in the name. Of course, whenever a car-like project is proposed, like the closure of road lanes and the introduction of parklets, there will always be the same few arguments from some ignorant people against it. Things like, "Now I can't drive my car here, what about parking it? Walao now I have to slow down for people? How can this be allowed?" While it is difficult to break pre-existing driving habits and disassociate cars with prestige, car dependency isn't sustainable nor suitable for the masses, and these perceptions can be changed for the better. just like what happened for buses. Not too long ago in the 70s, people would frown upon others for taking the bus. But today, it's a dignified and respected mode of travel used by people of all ages. The transition away from a sedentary lifestyle commuting in an insular cabin everywhere is tough, but having a more active and sociable lifestyle outside of one is better for one's physical and mental health in almost every way. Plus, if you think about it, the underlying motives behind arguing against Car Lite like safe travel, comfortable journeys, and reliable mobility aren't exclusive to drivers, but a common goal shared by every human being. Humans are a pragmatic species and will take the path of least resistance, and designing a city people first is the #1 way to reducing car dependency. People might say that it's impossible because Singapore is not Copenhagen, Singapore is not Amsterdam, but these cities that are commonly associated with people friendliness today weren't always this way. Any picture of a Dutch street in the 70s is just as car-infested as those in Singapore today, and it's through conscious efforts and decisions that the Dutch have taken back spaces once given away to cars and turned them into habitable spaces for human beings. The Dutch are just 50 years ahead of Singapore, and there's no reason why Singapore couldn't be designed around people, not just motor vehicles. Best put by urban designer Jan Gehl, first we shape the cities, then they shape us. At the end of the day, Car Lite is not car-free. Car Lite is just car-last. Safe, comfortable, quick, first-class mobility should not and cannot continue being a 6-digit premium, but instead return to a basic human right enjoyed by everyone. Because it's not the car that people need, it's reliable mobility. And if you can provide that to everyone, what better places cities can be. Hello everybody, if you'd like to share your desire to have a more livable Singapore in the future, I'd highly encourage you to share your views in URA's long-term plan review, link in the description. Plus, if you enjoyed this video and would like to support the channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.